Okay guys, now I do get asked fairly often. This kind of goes with making money out of your music. And the key underlying factor to, any success in terms of music, in anything really, is like, do you have a good product? Do you have good beats? In terms of what we're doing, do we have good beats? And that's not determined by us, that's determined by the rapper, the artist, the company who you're trying to work with. So you have to get your music to a point, there's no ifs and buts about it, you have to get your music to a point of somebody listening to it and wanting to actually use it, or best case scenario, buy it. Now, back to the thing that I was actually going to say. A lot of you guys ask me, do I actually master my beats? And honestly, I do not master my beats. When I show you what I do, you'll see that there's not a whole lot to it. But no, I do not master my beats. I used to master my beats using Isotope Ozone 7. I used to master them, but for the last 5 months, all I've done is mix. All I've done is mix the beat, level it properly, just get it sounding clean and good enough for the artist to do their thing on. Now, you may be asking, how do I go about doing that? And again, you're going to probably laugh at this, but there isn't a whole lot to it. There is a few paid plugins included, but I'm going to show you guys absolutely everything when it comes to my mix and how I go about doing it every single time. This isn't like a one-off. This is what I do in every single beat in terms of mixing, leveling, and all that. So I'm going to show up now and dive into the computer. Okay, now, first thing you want to do is get everything in the mixer in some kind of order, some kind of logical order. So I just like to color them first, put a gradient on them, and then just add them all to the mixer. Okay, cool. Then you want to add in 3 sub buses. These 3 sub buses are just going to group everything together. Makes it so much easier. You don't have to keep putting the same plugins on different sounds. So first one's going to be called drums. Any percussion, not the 808, not the kick or anything like that, but any percussion is going to run through there. Next one is the bass. The 808 is going to run through that. Any sub basses, any kicks, anything that's got low end. And then the last one, melody. So once I've done that, I'm going to make sure everything is running through the, the corresponding mixer track. So my drums are there, all the way to there. Okay, boom, they're going to run through there. 808 and the bass, run through the bass. The melody is going to run through there. Boom. Now everything's set up. You'd have to do this in any particular order, but what we're going to do is add effects to the drums, the bass, and the melody. Now the first thing we're going to do before we jump into any of that is come to the master, then just come to the last slot and add the beloved soft clipper. Don't do anything else to it, just upload it and then leave it. Okay, once you've added that soft clipper, we're just going to go ahead and just lower the volumes a little bit. You don't want to be way too high, you need some space just to mix it a little bit. So highlight everything and just drag it down a bit. And then what you can do, if you're not happy with how everything sounds, is level. So I'd highly suggest doing this before you go in and start adding effects. So if anything's too loud, turn it down. If anything's too quiet, turn it up. It's kind of logical. But some people may naturally do this whilst they're making the beat. I know I do now. If I'm recording in a sound and it sounds way too loud, I'll just kind of level it as I go along. Once you've got all that leveled, then we're going to go into our sub buses and start adding some effects. I'm just going to start with the drums because I want to. You can start with the bass, you can start with the melody, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to solo the drums. And the first thing I'm going to do is come to this built-in equalizer, and I'm just going to raise the low end and raise the high end just so I can get some punchiness from the lows, and then crispen up the highs, just to make them sound a bit cleaner. There's no exact frequency. All you really have to do is to play it by ear. So I raise the low end until I can hear a bit more thumping, more of a thumpy sound with the drums. Okay, and then raise the high end a little bit. Okay, good. So a bit cleaner, and we've got more thump in there. Now I'm going to start adding my first effect. The first one's called Bittersweet. It's basically just a transients enhancer, so it's just going to make them a little bit punchier. So I just drag this one knob up a little bit. Next one I come in with is the Camel Crusher. This is a free one as well. Just turn everything back to like the default setting, and then I'm just going to turn on fat mode on the compressor and just drag the compressor up a tiny bit. Cool. Now the next and the last thing that I'll put on the drums is this Apex Vintage Exciter. It's a paid plugin, but it's not that expensive. Now I'm going to go to this PA default preset and just drag it down a bit. So I'll turn it right up so you can hear how like harsh of an effect it is. Okay, so you don't want it to be like way too harsh, just want to pull it down a bit. Okay, that sounds good. And yeah, we're done with the drums. Next thing I'm going to go in with is the bass. You're going to laugh when I do this, but all I'm going to add is a compressor. It's this CLA2 compressor by Waves. It's like $30, I think. It's super good. So I'm just going to come in, turn the peak reduction right down because we don't want to do any compression just yet. We just want to make sure everything's sitting right, and then we'll just add the peak reduction. So just going to play with the gain. Okay, that's hitting nicely. And then I'm just gonna raise the peak reduction. So the peak reduction is just gonna like squash everything together a little bit. And you'll know when it starts doing that because this window here will start to move. This dial will start pulsing downwards. You only want to do a tiny bit. Like I wouldn't suggest going past -1 dB. Just add that tiny bit of peak reduction. It just kind of thickens out the bass a little bit. Okay, boom, that's the bass done. Now the last thing is the melody. So I'm just gonna solo the melody. First thing I'm going to do is add in the RC20, and I actually quite like this initial preset. I just turned the tape sound down a little bit, play with the wobble, and maybe add some reverb. Just depends on the melody. Yeah, I'm going to go do that. Now, the next thing I'm going to go in with is similar to the drums really. It's basically the same as the drums after this. So I'm going to add that Bittersweet plugin again. I'm going to turn this up a bit more than what I did on the drums. Okay. Now I'm going to add that Camel Crusher again. Boom. Okay, with this you want to compress a little harder and then sort of pull the volume back down again, just to match back up with what you were at originally. Cool. Next thing is that exciter. Again, back to the same preset, the PA default preset. And you want to go quite harsh with this one. I normally go between like 5 and 9. It completely depends on the melody. Just do it by ear until you get that kind of crisper sound. Okay, and then the next thing that I'm going to do is add just a fruity parametric EQ and then just cut out some of the low end because, you know, I want the bass and the sub bass just to be really clean. So not by much, just by a tiny bit, you know, you just want to have that clean low end. Okay, good. And then the last thing that I'm going to do, because of this exciter, it adds quite a lot of top end to it. So I'm just going to pull away some top end with the equalizer. And we should be good. And what I'll do sometimes as well, just to kind of like stretch out the melody, make it like more wider, is come to this knob here, the stereo separator, and I just separate it by like, you know, between like 10 and 20%. Again, I don't do it by numbers, I just do it by, you know, how it sounds. We should be there. So I'm just going to play everything. Now what I'm hearing from this, like now that I've added all my effects, is that the bass is too loud, so I'm just going to pull this submix down. Okay, that sounds good to me. I had to kind of bump the melody up a little bit as well. So that is all sounding good to me. Now the last thing that you want to do, just to give it some volume and like just to give it some more punch, is just pull all of your volumes back up. I normally do it with these three. You know, once you've got the levels sounding right, you've got all these effects put in, then you can just sort of go ahead and raise the volume back up again. So what I do first is lower the volume right down. We're going to push it up to 0 dB and push a little bit harder on the soft clipper because that's just going to cap everything anyway. Everybody knows this by now, but the soft clipper just is like got some voodoo to it where it just makes it sound harder. You know, if you push into it a little bit, it makes the drums sound harder, the 808 and everything. I'm going to push past 0 dB and, you know, make it clip a bit. So let's go. Now, that is literally all I'll do. And the good thing about doing all of this is that it doesn't take very long. You don't need a whole lot of CPU to do it because you're only adding like a few effects. And it cuts out you having to master the beat, which, you know, is a bonus in itself. So this routine for me, this mixing routine, is basically more efficient for me. I could do more with this and make it sound like perfect, but the key for me is to put out as much content as I can, and making videos as well. There's lots of other things that you need to be doing to push the music out there. So to make everything as efficient as possible is so key. And this is like the most efficient way that I've found to get that, you know, clean sounds, and at the same time I can get loads and loads of material out at the same time. So yeah, that's my routine. Oh, good news, everybody. In about a week's time, I believe that the restrictions for like this whole lockdown thing are going to be sort of mildly reduced. Does that make sense? So we'll be able to go out more often. But yeah, that got me thinking, like, now that I can drive, I thought, why not try and like drive somewhere random, like up in the mountains somewhere, park up and just like make a beat like out in the open. I don't know, you let me know. That sounds kind of stupid now that I've said it. You'd actually realize how difficult it is to film and make a beat at the same time. Like when I first started doing this, it was like the hardest thing, because like you're really aware that like the camera's there recording, and it kind of like throws you off, because like it's basically like someone's watching you and you're trying to make a beat and make sure that the camera's still running, so you kind of rush through it. But anyway, I'm literally just rambling on, talking a whole lot of nonsense now. But yeah, the last bit of good news is that hairdressers are actually going to be reopening as well next week when the restrictions get lifted slightly. The crazy hair can be chopped way off. I might just shave it all off. It's been doing my head in for the last like 2 weeks, so. Hello.